Saurav is a fashion designer. He's a gold medalist from NET. He's Odissi dancer. He's a singer. And he's a painter. He's an amazing artist and a very close friend of mine.
Well, you have just been too kind.
Yeah, and he does fantastic work in the textiles. And I have been his fan of his work, the way he creates the silk, the way he revives the saris, and the way he has recreated some old saris. So it's been fantastic, really seeing his work, knowing him for some years, seeing him dance, and you know,
Thank you, Gitanjali. You have just been too kind.
lot of arts he possesses and he tries to experiment. So yeah, let's go back to our questions. So Saurabh, first tell me how you came into fashion. Like what was the thing you came in fashion?
Well, thank you. Thanks a lot, Gitanjali, first of all, for giving me this opportunity, on your prestigious page to interact with the Rasikas, all the art lovers. So I'm Saurav, and we have been very good friends. Like, I remember meeting Gitanjali like almost 5 years back, right? It's been almost 5, 6 years.
Yeah, I think
And
almost 5, 6 years.
yeah, and you were going through all the research. Um, you know, you were pursuing a lot of research with Harappan spears and the tool making techniques of Harappa. So it was very fascinating, meeting such a person, and especially when you find somebody who belongs to the same tribe, having the having the same sensibility and aesthetics, who appreciate, who have a similar perspective to look at arts. But I'm Saurav. I brag myself as a storyteller. I was born and brought up in Assam, and I started learning music at a very tender age. Probably I was like just 4 years old when I started learning Hindustani music from Lucknow Gharana. And art and culture, it has just happened to me like very organically, I would say. I mean, I've been liking surrounded with all the traditional art forms, the cultural aspects. I was like born in a joint family, so I've seen a lot of amalgamation of art happening within the family. My grandfather was a classical vocalist. He still sings at he's 89 years old, but still he sings, and I really get fascinated when he sings those ragas at this very age. My uh, my father can play tabla, my uncle can play sitar and tabla. All my cousins, we all grew up with having some sort of co-curricular activities. The weaving, the craft, the textile has happened very organically to me. I've seen there was a neighbor right next to our house. She was an Assamese humble woman who would make her own gamosas, who would make her own mekhla chadar right from the childhood. And like I've seen her working on a backstrap loom, tying her baby on her back. That's the traditional way how tribal women would carry their baby. As even you go to the northeastern states today, you will get to see a lot of women, doing their household activities, tying their babies on their back or maybe on their torso with the chadar, or anything which is hand woven, which is made out of cotton and a very fine fabric. So I've seen a lot of women even rearing silk in their own house. So the place where I belong to, it's a suburb. It's neither a city nor a big town. It was a very suburban, uh, like very very small suburban town with a lot of tea estates around, a lot of ponds in most of the houses, traditional ponds. So nature was very close to me. I mean, that's how maybe I got sensitized towards a lot of sustainable aspect of life, like how your approach towards life can be very sustainable in every possible way, right from your food habits to what you wear. I mean, whether it is handcrafted or not, whether it is made out of organic fabrics or not. So I'm very nostalgic to all these things. So I have seen my grandmother, wearing a lot of muslins because she was a lady from Chittagong. She was born and brought up in Chittagong, which is in Bangladesh right now. But as a kid, she had to migrate. They had come to India as migrants during the riots, and so she would tell me a lot of stories associated with weaving and the kind of textile she had got, the old textiles made out her wedding sari, like especially the wedding sari, which has been fascinating me since childhood. I always used to go ask her again and again, show me your sari again. So she would like but yeah, the great thing was she had never said no to me. Every time I went to her, and she would show me, instead of showing one sari, she would show me four saris, and also uh, explaining me the value of that particular commodity, like why it was very special and what was that pallu was all about. What I mean, whether it is starched or not, whether it's a starched cotton. I would also ask her about the traditional way of how do you put starch on your saris. If it's a red sari, she had her own recipe. She would add alta. uh, I remember when I was a kid, like she I mean that time they didn't use predominantly the Revive and whatever we get nowadays in the market
Right.
as the fixers, like the starch mediums. So she would boil her, sagudana paste, or maybe some sort of maida, and she would add those color pigments to it, so that when she dips a red sari on a starch solution, once it gets dried, it should not leave those white granules to it.
Oh wow.
So she would put alta, and if it's a yellow sari, she would even add turmeric powder maybe, or if it's a blue sari or a black sari, she would add the robin blue, the neil powder, which usually the rural people uses to rinse their clothes for final rinsing. So these are the techniques I have always seen. During Durga Puja, I would see my grandmother keeping a lot of dhotis, which the Brahmin used to get. During Pujo, you actually buy a lot of clothes which goes as offering to the gods and demigods. But after a point of time, the consumption aspect isn't that much. You don't get to use so many clothes. So it is enough for a person to use throughout the year. So she would just stock those dhotis, and and during the spring festival like Basant Panchami, which is like the March month. So usually in Bengal, or in most of the Bengali household, you would see small girls wearing yellow saris. You know, they wear yellow saris. So my grandmother would collect a lot of parijatam flower after the autumn festival, which are actually the leftovers of after the pujo, or maybe excess flour. She would sun dry them and she would stock them for spring season. Yeah. So what happens when you when you sun dry the parijatam flower, and you boil them up, it actually gives you a natural dye, which is like turmeric yellow in color, beautiful yellow. I mean orangish yellow.
The stems are orange, so from that it.
Yeah, the stem is orange. Also, when the flower gets little soggy, and like when it tends to get spoiled, you will see it is turning yellowish in color. So the natural pigments it releases is yellow in color actually. So she would sun dry them, she would stock them, she would store them for a longer run. And during the month of February or March, when actually the Vasant Panchami happens, which is like also Saraswati Puja for Bengalis. So she would, dye those white dhotis in the parijatam solution. I mean, she would boil the dried parijatam flower and made a dye out of it. And she would dye them, and she would also paint the borders with alta to give it a contra like a contrast sari with a nice red border and a yellow body. And the small kids, even like amongst our relatives, within the family, and a lot of people even who used to live in the nearby houses would wear similar looking saris, and would dance. I have been always a confused soul, you know. After my plus two, I was in a dilemma that whether I want to pursue fashion or dance or, or life science, because I was extremely good at biology and biochemistry. So my father wanted me to pursue medicine. So I tried for BDS also. I got through, but the college I was getting, because it was a governmental college, so I asked my parents that no, this is not my cup of tea. I'm not gonna spend my 5 years learning dentistry. So like my father decided to send me to Bangalore to pursue genetics. And so, yeah, I pursued BSc in biotechnology, genetics, and biochemistry. So that was my core combination. And I did pretty well. My core percentage was good too. But there was this uh, strange, feeling of chasing fashion or something to do with fine arts, because I always have felt that that is where my soul belongs to, because I already had a degree of fine arts. I have had fine arts expertise, and I was inclined towards music and dance. So I thought maybe, okay, good to be a student of science, and maybe I will not end up happily being in the laboratories, doing experiments, biotechnological experiments and all. So without even telling my parents during my final semester, so I sat for the NIFT entrance. I got through it, and when I got through the second round as well, and my the number, the merit rank was ninth all over India, which was quite a good rank, and so that's when I told my father that there is no way out, because he also needs to be present during my counseling, because he has to sign all the, you know, the official letters and whatever the college is going to give to me. So there were only three centers, Delhi, Bombay, and Kannur, that point of time for post-graduation degree, which I wanted to pursue. So my specialization was like traditional textiles. And luckily my father was supportive enough. Maybe he was also very soft towards me at that point of time. So he traveled all the way to Delhi, and yeah, I got through, and it was my preference to choose Kannur initially, though I was getting Bombay, because Kannur I chose because I could see amongst all the electives, the post graduation program was offering, Kannur had a lot of folk arts. Uh, I would get a lot of exposure to explore the Kerala folk arts. So after completion of my post graduation, the dissertation project I got,
Yeah.
I started with my dissertation project, which was like contemporization of Jamdani, and understanding the very technique in its origin, because when we talk about Jamdani, the origin is Bangladesh, as lots of people know it, that Dhaka Jamdani is where the technique has originated. It has started.
Jamdani today.
I am making kind of. And also the best of the cottons have come from Dhaka, the Futi cotton.
Okay.
Which the seed doesn't exist anymore. I mean, when Britishers have left, they have made sure, that those seeds seed no more exists, and so that they can introduce the BT cotton. So in today's time, what most of the people are using are BT cotton, which is not desi, which is not our indigenous crop. It was introduced by the Britishers. A lot of indigenous crops needs to be saved and recultured. Talk about Kala cotton, talk about Futi cotton, talk about the Pundur Khadi.
Okay.
A lot of designers, a lot of NGOs have started working on this particular movements, you can say, growing your own cotton, your own desi cotton, spin them, rear them, and cultivate, and then I mean the entire process happens from the scratch within the cluster.
Of our own cotton, which
Yeah, exactly.
and beautiful and suits our basically weather conditions.
Weather conditions as well. Yes, yes, absolutely. Because BT cotton is a GMO cotton. It's a genetically modified cotton. It is not natural. I mean, when you talk about Kala cotton or any sustainable organic cotton, these plants are like rain-fed cottons. They are rain-fed. They are naturally resistant to a lot of pests, a lot of uh, they are conditioned. The tactility, the texture of that particular fabric is suitable for the geographical atmosphere, or the you know
Also suitable for farmers because BT has given a lot of problem to farmers as well.
oh yes, yes, a lot of people are interdependent. The person who is growing, he's then supplying it to the cotton like the spinners who would spin the cotton, and then these people would send this cottons, the weavers will buy the spun, the hangs from these people. So that's how the entire community is interchained. They all are getting benefited in some or the other ways. So I mean, yeah, now I'm rearing. I mean, I have gotten access to a lot of people, a lot of spinners who are even rearing 620 count of organic cotton in Bengal, which is one of the finest. I mean, you also will get to see a lot of muslins which have been curated from Dhaka, the Mughal muslins, the Jamdanis which are from the Mughal era in Victoria Albert Museum. Even those counts are even above 600. That's how they are the most finest. So luckily I could convince somebody, a very expert person in terms of understanding yarns. So he's making 420 to 600 counts, and I'm trying to even blend raw materials from Bengal. I mean, that is how I have started my entire uh, understanding of exploring traditional textiles. Is like, how do you build a bridge between communities? Like, the raw material can be from Bengal
Okay.
and can got weaved in Chanderi, and that's how most of the royalties used to work earlier. The best of the silks would come from China, but they were all woven in Banaras and Gujarat. And that's how, with the royalties shifting their kingdoms, they have got a lot of weavers from Banaras with them. So that's how a lot of cross cultural exchange has happened, and the diversification of this particular craft has happened, which has become a legacy of tradition throughout a lot of years. And what I am doing is working with pure techniques. I mean, I'm lucky enough to have mentors like Rahul Jain, Padma Shri Rahul Jain. He's an author, he's a curator, and he's a textile designer. And Martanda Singh, Mapu, has always inspired me. So Rahul Jain, Rahul sir used to be one of the core members from Martanda Singh's troupe, because post independence they were the one who started all the Weaver Service Center, what we get to see today in India. And they have worked intensively, to revive, to sustain the Indian craft techniques. So, and they have promoted the local weavers, the local craftsmen, to consistently work on their particular art form.
What is that you are doing with silk, cotton? What is that you are weaving, or what products you are creating? What saris you are
Well,
making?
so in Banaras, I am working with a very old technique called Sapa technique, because what you get to see in the market, the tactility of the saris or any fabric, most of the time which you get in the market are very thick.
Okay.
Now, what has happened, with advanced technology and technicalities, this weavers, like the master weavers, even to get things done in a short span of time, and the the very understanding of perfection, the very understanding of luxury and comfort has changed. They think the more closely the yarns are tacked, the more it is luxurious, but actually not. The imperfection of human hand, the little imperfection of, handloom textiles is what makes it look more vintage and more perfect. So Sapa technique used to be a very old technique where the weft and the warp, the tana and the bana are loosely combed in the loom, so that there is a gap, there is a breathability, space in between all the yarns. That's how the old textiles used to be, because everything was hand spun. Now handloom, most of the even hand woven saris are hand woven, but not necessarily the yarn they are using is hand spun. They can be machine spun or from the umber charkha, or maybe meal yarn.
Okay.
Yeah, so I mean, right from the grassroots, right from the scratch, right from the yarn, right from the technique you are using has to be handcrafted. So that is what I'm doing. Like whatever yarn I'm using is hand spun, the weaving is hand woven, and Sapa technique makes the fabric more tactile and museum looking kind. I'm using vegetable colors in Banaras. Well, I will start with my grandmother's wedding sari. So this was the sari what my grandmother had. So this is basically a recreation of the same sari. So she would call it a Hajarbuti sari. And here you can see the tissue weaving with kadwa. It is very rare. You don't get to see tissue and karwa happening in today's time, in most of the saris. So these are like blending two different techniques together. So I convinced one master weaver, and that's how I started. This was my first inspiration, recreating like her wedding sari, which was like torn and tattered, but it is the same design, same yarn count, with real zari, and which is kind of inspired me more to recreate. So these are like few Maheshwari saris which I have, so I have a habit of doing a lot of visual research. I would go through a lot of paintings of the royalties, a lot of old portraits of the royal ladies, how they would dress up, what were the kind of saris they wore. So I'm kind of reviving, recreating those imageries. And this is the Narmada Nahar, they say, the gold and silver zari border. So these are very old, I mean, striped and madder red and katha red, burgundy. These are very old looking colors. And I will take you through few of the saris which I have just kept. Well, how do I
You will have to flip the.
how do I turn it back? Well, can you see?
Yeah.
So see, like this is entirely karwa done with real zari, and this is the sapa. This is the sapa texture you get to see in the silk, which is like Banarasi, at the same time very lightweight and breathable, and shinier because of the gap in the tana and bana. It is also giving a beautiful luster.
Yes. Beautiful.
And it is drapable. The best thing is it is drapable. Most of the women have stopped wearing sari because they find these traditional textiles to be very heavy and not user friendly. They say sari mujhse sambhala nahi jayega. This psyche needs to change, and we are responsible, like textile designers have to be responsible to come out of their typical way of doing what the market has been doing, and kind of indulging more into the research and development, how to make the fabric more softer, more drapable, so that women understand the value of it and stop complaining, because that's the time when they're gonna find it more comfortable, when they. So this is a real zari sari. You can see even the same sensibility is happening, and this is in a finer count. You can see partially my hand, You can see like how fine the fabric is. It is like, yeah, it's a fine cotton by silk sari with a real zari ashavali border.
Okay.
And it's a very rare technique. We call it as patka. If you see the old uh, Mughal textiles in the museums, they would have, you know, such Mughal motifs.
Pallu, my God.
A lot of miniature painting has this Mughal bhutas. The characters they have drawn, that the kings would wear a patka over their, like a sash over their angarakhas. So
Okay.
this patka used to be a very like, you know, luxurious fabric for the royalties,
Yeah,
which
we
has
have
stopped.
patka. So yeah.
Yeah, so I'm reviving this particular technique of, you know, doing a gold base and minakari on it.
Oh wow. Okay.
So I'll also show you the back side of the weave
Okay.
so that you understand how laborious and, you know, tedious the process is.
Right.
So, and this Konya again, if you see a lot of, and yeah, Raja Ravi Verma's painting are like, you know, all-time inspiration for me. So I derive inspiration from his paintings, the sophistication, you know, all the Ravi Verma Naikas had, the kind of saris they wore, what Lakshmi Saraswati has wore in his paintings. So yeah, I would love to recreate all those. So this is in real zari, the very Konya saris, and this mango. If you see in Ravi Verma's painting, most of the Naikas are wearing Banarasis of similar angris, you know, similar angri border. And this is Hajar Booty again,
Yeah.
Karwa Booties. And it's a colorway in fuchsia.
Yeah. I love small booties. I love smaller beauties.
Yeah, I mean, you know, minimalist and sophisticated. They are like timeless. And this is a Jangla Shikarga, you can see. It's
So
an all over zari sari.
wow.
It's all over zari sari, but what interesting in this sari is the motif, you know. Usually in traditional shikargas, you will get to see deer, peacock, swans, tiger, and, you know, at times bull, even horses.
Okay.
But here you get to see giraffe and zebra, which is little unconventional.
Okay.
So that's a zebra,
Wow.
and that's a giraffe, yeah. And the foliage, the jangla is happening all over.
Okay.
And oh, well, I will also like to show you something. Just a while. So, and I love collecting old textiles, like, you know, from the curators or from the royal families. So this is what I have curated a year back, and it is in real gold zari. It's a safa from one of the royalty. So the safa, what a man would, you know, wear, tie around his
Headgear.
head. Yeah, and I mean, it is so beautiful because what I mean, you know, impressed me about this particular piece is the linear patterns. What is happening here? Banaras would have never linear patterns. Like, you know, if you go see today, in today's time, you know how Banarasis are. Most of the Banarasis are curvy, you know, with curvy motifs, curve patterns. But earlier days, these linear lines used to happen. I mean, but people must have forgotten, you know, making this particular design, this particular designing. So this was my inspiration, and this is called charkhana. I mean, which is a very old style of weaving. So I have collected this because I wanted to recreate this particular designing on saris, you know, diversify it into saris. So I have made charkhana saris and charkhana dupattas. I recently had a exhibition in Jaipur. So that's where a lot of women from the royalty have bought. So these are the saris and this is the palla. It's a recreation of the same old antique what I have shown just now.
Right.
So that's the same palla what I have put, you know, if you can see, and they are all real zari. What I'm using, like right from the scratch, the zariyas also, like, you know, I'm getting them made exclusively for my products. So all the zaris are suti zaris, like on a cotton thread, which are dyed in turmeric or either like or in madder, and then the gold yarn is rolled on it. So that I'm very finicky, I'm very fussy about the shade of gold I want. So everything what I'm doing is like very R&D oriented, and I'm enjoying it. I just enjoy the entire process. And probably this is something what I have learned from my gurus, like dance gurus though, Bijoy Nidhi and Shurupadi, that never take shortcuts. Like you can never achieve the happiness, the inner happiness by taking shortcuts.
I
Maybe
think exactly probably connects us the way I also like to do. I mean,
yeah,
yeah, this is what we always speak about, I think. Yeah.
exactly. I mean, after a point of time, you enjoy that pain. I mean, initially you feel that, oh my God, the entire process is so tedious, so painful.
Yeah.
But
Long.
the more you keep on pushing yourself, you get habituated to it and you start enjoying that pain. So this is also a charkhana sari, with the same palla, and it's in a very vintage, old,
Right.
like yeah, greenish blue, you can say.
I love the teal color.
Yeah, it's a very beautiful teal. It's a vintage teal. So this is the same charkhana happening.
Right.
So the same safa got recreated into saris and dupattas right now. So this is what my entire understanding of textile is. So I'm showing mostly Banarasis right now, but I'm working with Kanjivaram. I'm working with a lot of Maheshwaris, Chanderis as well.
Okay.
And what was a rage, for the royalties when I did my Jaipur exhibition, the zari tissues. Like this is something what I have, kind of revived, I would say.
Yeah.
Zari tissues used to be, a symbol of royalty. In most of the old portraits of the royal women, they always wore zari tissue saris or, dupattas with kirans.
Right.
Kiranas, like the fringes, the metallic fringes you get to see in most of the North Indian royal families like Awadh, Punjab, Rajasthan. So these are like even this is a very interesting technique of weaving which I'm working on right now. So it's a 4-petal technique. Also, the texture, the tactility of the sari makes it look very mushroom kind, because mushroom has a shiny luster. So when you wear it, so it's a gold silver sari all over. It's very metallic, and I don't know how the light is because I have mostly yellow lights in my.
Of color, we are able to understand the difference between.
You can able to understand, and
I'm able to notice the antique.
Yeah, so these are the saris probably post lockdown. I'll get a photo shoot done and I'll upload it in my page.
Okay.
So these are the gold tissues 4-petal saris which I'm recreating from the royal, like taking inspiration from the royal portraits. And this is again a zari tissue sari, a gold silver. How easy breezy they are! Like I'm just totally fast. I love fabrics. So this is even one, like very easy breezy metallic sari, and that's a very interesting sari. I know you will like it because that's totally your sensibility.
I have a gold sari from you.
Yeah. Gitanjali, can you be little louder? I can't hear you. I can't hear you. Can you be little louder?
I have that gold silver sari you just showed me.
Oh yeah, but I should tell you the
so beautifully.
I should tell you what it is made out of. This is Kala cotton.
Okay.
It's a Kala cotton sari woven with 4-petal technique. And first time, I have introduced zari with Kala cotton to make it look more grand and, usually Kala cotton is very organic.
Asking us by warp web size, what is zari tissue sari? I mean, what is the warp web technique in the zari tissue sari?
It's pure metal. It is pure metal. Only one yarn which goes in between the gold and the silver is a Kora yarn.
Okay.
It's a Kora yarn, but again, it is very subjective. If you want to keep the texture if you want to keep the texture very transparent, then no need to use any silk yarn in between. It can be entirely metal.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Shows that black and gold sari, and then I want to ask you something more.
Yeah, so this is a black gold sari. Even this I want to, shoot post lockdown. And there is a colorway of it. I'll show you some of interesting saris which are very rare. I'm sure you will like. And this is a colorway. Even this is in Kala cotton. It's a gray colorway.
I'm very happy you're able to make this in Kala cotton. That's really interesting.
Oh yeah. That was a bit challenging, I got the yarns and got them woven in a different cluster, not in Bhuj. Usually Kala cottons are woven in Bhuj because they are from Bhuj, yeah. So the traditional weavers are from Bhujori who would make, scarf and very organic looking saris. Anabila has worked intensively with Kala cotton, but her sensibility was very Gujarat, like Kutch.
Right.
But this is what my design vocabulary was like, very minimalistic, sophisticated and linear lines. Like when I talk about like geometry, it has to be absolute geometry. And when I talk about, clutter, it has to be like, very rich, exclusive Indian textile. Like a lot of motifs happening, rich motifs happening, a lot of golds, a lot of bright colors popping out. So I always believe in, if I have to be like clutter, I have to be like super cluttery, like super maximalist. And if I have to be like linear and minimal, then colors have to be soothing, potent, like black and reds and grays.
Tell us about your experience working with, you work with these big fashion designers like Gaurang Shah, Sabyasachi. So what do you learn from them? Because
let me show you one more. So this is also a zari tissue. I was very excited to show this to you.
Oh yeah, please.
Yeah, it's a red. It's a Sindoor Lal. Sindoor Lal zari tissue. Oh my God, I'm in love with it. I'm just waiting eagerly, like when I'm gonna shoot it. When I'm gonna get the photo shoot. So that's a beautiful, like zari tissue red. And I wish you could touch the fabric to understand the tactility of it. It's beautiful. It's beautiful. So these are my first pieces, and I need to do a shoot with it. Gitanjali, I'll also show the Patka saris what I have revived.
Yeah. Please show.
So the Mughal Patkas I was mentioning you about.
Someone wanted to show Sri Shikargarh sari again also, but yeah,
someone wants to see the Shikarga again.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll show.
And show the Patka one, and then we can
see. This is a Patka sari. You can see the Mughal motifs happening.
Okay, yeah, the floral motifs.
And look at the color.
Yeah.
Look at the intricacy. It's all meenakari. And
yes.
And thin borders.
What
are grandmother and the old people would wear.
Very elegant ones.
Very elegant. And look at the colors even.
Yes.
I mean, this is a very old technique of weaving, which I'm working on. Very few weavers are working on this, by the way. Okay. You should see the Koni of it's very interesting. Even this is a Mughal Patka. Look at the colors. Like they're very summery.
Very summery, yeah. Very beautiful shades.
Yeah, very beautiful shade. And you should see the exclusivity is this, the Konia.
Oh yeah. So
it's a typical traditional, like hand done floral Konia.
Wow.
And look at the border happening. It's so intricate.
Okay.
Also see the back. I mean, see, most of the textile connoisseurs will understand looking at the back of this sari because it's like a painting, very tedious.
Right.
It's very time taking and everything is happening with a single thread.
Yeah.
Sorry, I think my battery is gonna get exhausted soon.
Okay. Yeah, we will now.
Yeah. Oh, this is a beautiful color again. It's a pista. It's like vintage anguri.
Yeah. So how you are doing the marketing of the products you are making, and what you are like?
Well, I wish to market them.
A
I
lot
want
of
to
people are
start.
asking right now how they can buy it. So please tell them.
Okay, so I'll be starting my Instagram page very soon, and with the photo shoots and the products I have, I would definitely upload them. Um and yeah, Gitanjali will promote my Instagram page on through her Moha page as well, because we are surely gonna collaborate soon.
Yes.
I have my Instagram page called Nomadic Instincts 91.
Okay.
You can follow.
Page, right? So
That's my private page, but yeah, I will link my profession. I'll link my label account as well with my private page,
okay.
so that eventually they can follow further. I haven't started marketing. I'm very bad at business, I would say,
You
so
will
far. Yeah, because I'm more of an artist. I'm more of an artist who's just chasing, the hobbies, the inspirations, what I wanted to always work on. So making those things practical, like focusing more on the creation part right now. But I'm sure business will happen eventually. If your work is good, then people will appreciate, hopefully.
Tell me what you learned while working with Gaurang Shah or while working with
Well,
Sabyasachi.
they are wonderful mentors. I have had an amazing time working with Gaurang.
Okay.
Gaurang, and like also Mamta Reddy. She does kalamkari, and she is one of the very experienced in that domain, I would say. So Mamtamma and Gaurang has guided me thoroughly, and that was my first job. He sponsored my final dissertation project. So the entire Jamdani process was being documented with his help, because he sponsored my entire dissertation. So it was a brilliant experience, like.
You learned something particularly while you worked with Sabyasachi?
After Gaurang, yes, and when I went to Sabya, definitely, it was a lot of learning. It was a lot of learning. The best thing what I have learned being there is, like, how to value your time. Like, you just keep working whole day, and that then also you feel it's never enough, because there is no limit to hard work. I mean, I have learned how much I can push myself.
Interesting. So, also tell me, what is the current situation of artisans who are working in this textile field? Because you are from the field, so you might know.
Exactly. So, I mean, as far I have heard it from few of my friends, and few of the people who are weavers. It's okay. It's quite stable. I don't work with, like, too many weavers. I have access to hardly 15 looms right now, including all the clusters I'm working with. So my weavers have been taken care of, and yeah, I mean, I keep calling them up. Unka hal chal puchne ke liye, and they're just doing well, I feel, right now. And I educate them at the same time. Educate in the sense, I mean, I tell them not to go out, take proper precautions and this and that. Right. So a lot of primary designing is been happening, through call, through video chats, like whatever, like, because see, being an artist, being a designer, like, ideas keep popping up. So I feel like, jotting them down and, share it with my viewers. So that keeps happening, I mean, it's okay. It's okay, except a few places.
Villages, and yeah, they are like able to do it. Not bad right now.
Few of the clusters, yes. In Banaras, a lot of people are going through really tough time, but luckily, I mean, the families I'm working with, the master craftsmen, they have shared, so I have helped the way I could, whatever way I could. But then, ठीक है, I mean, उतना कुछ serious नहीं है. I would say everybody is going through a tough time, and people have been supportive to each other. Yeah. people are supporting each other. That's a very good thing. People have understood the value of, the importance of humanity, and the like how you can be helpful to each other. I mean, that
Right.
is something which we are learning right now, and being a humanitarian. So yeah, I mean, that's it. I'll show the Shikarga again. Somebody wanted to see the Shikarga, right?
Show the Shikarga, and then we will like kind of wind
We'll
it up. Yeah.
we'll wind it up. Yeah. So this is the Shikarga sari. That's gonna be the palla with the tassels, gold silver tassels happening, and that's the anchal, and that's the entire body. The all over body is this. So basically, the resham is playing a negative role, I would say.
Okay.
It's majorly gold. Yeah. So everything is happening with extra weft,
Okay.
which has been raised. The motif has got more emphasis. The entire jala, and the main color of the sari is acting as a negative space. That's the border.
Okay. So Saurav, Saili is asking you, Saili Palandit is asking you,
Hanji,
dance influence your textile creations?
dance.
Yeah, how does dance influence your textile creations?
It certainly did. It certainly did. Because when you talk about dance and dancers, the Devadasis, they were the pioneers, they were the pioneers of Kala, from where you would learn, most of the art forms. You would learn how to talk, how to write poetry, how to paint. And they were the ambassadors of the society, I would say, in terms of clothing, jewelry, and all sorts of art form. Because they were the special ones, one who is married to the gods have to also get dressed up, very godly. So they would wear the expensive.
The earlier portraits of Devdasis are so fascinating, the way they dwell.
Very fascinating. Exactly. So when you talk about Devadasi traditions, the Mahari traditions, and during the Chola period in the down south, you see their portraits, Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
While learning, even, while reading Natya Shastra, Abhinaya Darpana, Natya Manorama, Natya Darpana. So there are, there are descriptions of Ashtanaikas, the different emotions of women, the different moods of women. I mean, during what occasion, what kind of.
Naika and the different ones who are.
Yeah, Vasaka Sajja Naika, then Virohat Kantita Naika. There were a lot of Naikas, one who is disguised by her lover, one who is like, ready for the union. So there were a lot of Naikas, different moods, different wisdom of, of a woman has been portrayed through those descriptions. And there are a lot of compositions by Jayadev in Gita Govindam, where he has, portrayed Radharani as different Naikas in different compositions, where she's like, there is a very beautiful composition. It's a Ashtapadi by Jayadeva, Puruyadu Nandana Chandana Sisira, where she's like a very confident Naika, and she's barely dressed. She's wearing finest of the textiles, which are like very transparent, you can say, just to seduce, just to entice Krishna.
Okay.
And she had put, and talk about Shringar again. She had put, the bun pretty loose so that Krishna can come, comb it, and put it back, ornate it with all the pearls what she had kept aside for Krishna to put on them. She had also, it is very sensual. I wouldn't say erotic. It's very sensual for an art lover to read those poems. She's asking Krishna in our love play, you know, the tattoos, the patterns of flowers and tulsi leaves, what I have drawn on my breast have got smudged. Please put them back. Like, decorate me again. I mean, you know, I want to get dressed up, you know, beautifully once again. So here's how romantic, how sensual. So that's how she's portraying, you know, her confidence. Like that, these are very beautiful things. Talk about Devadasis. Devadasis were the only people who never used to follow Parda Pratha. They were the only public representatives during that period.
Okay.
They were the cultural ambassadors, you know, who would dance in public, who would sing in public, who would come in front of public, you know, wearing the best of the textiles, the best of the jewelries, the best of the best of, like, you know, tehzeeb, ada. I mean, you talk about the adabus. They, as if, you know, they have come out of the temple sculptures and walking in the public, because the royal women who had the privilege to wear best of the fabrics, best of the textiles, jewelries, they never could come in public. You know, it wasn't allowed. They would always be accessible to the royalties, but not outside. They were always behind the wall. But Devadasis were the one who were, like, you know, and yeah, they also got commissioned. They also got commissioned to wear like best of the fabrics. Right. So there is a textile what Rukmini Devi Arundal has revived during her, you know, during her time in Kalakshetra. Rukmini Devi Arundal, I'm talking about the founder of Kalakshetra, who has learned Bharatanatyam from the Devadasis herself and have started this Gurukula in Chennai. And today Kalakshetra is one of the biggest like Bharatanatyam Gurukul in this entire country, and a lot of best dancers are coming out of Kalakshetra. So Rukmini Devi Arundal had a beautiful understanding of not only dance but the textiles. So she would always, you know, design her costumes for the dance dramas, like Sita's. She had choreographed a lot of dance drama like Sita Swayamvaram, Sri Rama Pattabhishekam, and Rukmini Kalyanam. Likewise, there were a lot of dance dramas where she would design the, you know, clothes of the characters. Not only the clothes, the jewelries, the crafted jewelries. So there was a textile called Sabbai Alankaram, which is also, I mean, Sabbai Alankaram, it's a very Tamil dialect of saying Sabha and Alankaram. So a textile which has two thalapayattus. Thalapayattus are the pallus, like Pallavas are called as Thalayapayattus. So she was the one who actually innovated like a sari with two pallus.
Okay.
So, because if you are draping that sari as a madasere or a dhoti way, you know how the dancers would wear. So one pallu, the pallu which is starting at the beginning, can become the fan or the melak, you know, like how the Bharatanatyam dancer has. Because the concept of stitched garment has come much later. Earlier, it always used to be drapes. Everything used to be like draped. So one pallu which goes on the back is in a different color, and the other pallu on the other end of the sari would serve the purpose of a melak, or the, you know, the fan of the sari. So that's how, like, you know, people like Rukmini Devi Arundal, and if you have noticed, dancers are always like, you know, this is my personal feeling, like most of the dancers, most of the classical dance practitioners, or anybody who is associated with some other classical, you know, art forms, are naturally graceful.
Yes.
I mean, the way they carry themselves, they as if, because they are so confident about their body movements, that even though if they wear a 200 rupee cotton sari or a 400 rupee sari, it looks very expensive and exclusive on them. It is all about your persona. Your clothing can be an extension of your persona. Your clothing is not what is gonna, you know, make you look beautiful.
True,
I
true.
mean, until and unless you have that persona.
Absolutely true.
So it has to be like, vice versa. You have to keep uh, evolved within yourself, and you should have the understanding that what I should wear, what it is, what gonna make me look beautiful. And being a Indian woman, I feel every woman should take a pride, take take I mean, take a privilege and feel proud about wearing their cultural attires, especially drapes. And that is what they are made for. I mean, it has been a research of so many generations of wearing saris, predominantly saris, because I'm not saying that everybody should wear saris, but most of the state in India has been like it has been saris, like either 9 yard or 6 yard, but draping styles are always been different regionally.
In India, we
Yeah,
have few draping styles. Saurabh, we have
exactly.
lots of comments. Let me read some for you, and then we will end the session. So some
Okay,
are
perfect.
really saying this is
I
one.
know I talk a lot. I'm not giving you time.
No, okay, I'm enjoying. And a lot of people are saying this is one of the best session they have seen in lockdown period. This has been very insightful session, a great piece of information. A lot of them never knew, why there are two pallas in some sari, and how they could wear it, or what was the purpose. Now they know
So
it. Uh,
even I
she
am
will-
trying to make
yeah, she will work
Sabai Alankaram. Yeah.
you, and lot of same practices, and then many of them are asking where they can buy it from you, so you should please
So
make
you are the only way out right now for me. You can pass on my number to them, or maybe
many are saying just go on, they don't
so
mind having a
all
lot.
of I'll also put my comment here. Right now I can't. I'll type my Instagram ID.
Facebook page later, and you can share it everywhere also, and I'll make
Exactly.
it available, which you can put later on Instagram.
Totally. They can any day message me on Instagram, and I'll definitely get back.
You can also share it on Instagram later. And yeah, I'm so happy. This was wonderful session. I'm sorry this was viewers. I'm very sorry for we doing it late. Like, we apologize.
Yeah.
And I love your hair bun. And
Someone said,
someone was
okay, thank you.
they love your beautiful hair, and they love your photographs. They love your dance photographs. They love your. Oh my God, so much crush happening here.
Oh, goodness. Thank you. I take it as a pleasure.
There
Yeah.
are a lot of people who are saying all of this.
Thank you so much. Thank you for engaging yourself for so long with us, and being with us. We have enjoyed it thoroughly.
Almost more than 1 hour peacefully.
Yeah. It is quite a long session.
So yeah, thank you very much, everyone.